Great, thank you very much. So thanks for the great turnout, everyone. I know it's beer o'clock and we're about to knock off very soon, so I'll be pretty quick and to the point here. Is this the clicker?
Big green button.
The big green button, good. All right, just to introduce myself, I'm Mark Perry. I'm Principal Architect with Ping Identity based in Melbourne, Australia. I look after Asia Pacific and I represent the Office of the CTO as well. What I'd like to talk to you today are some of the really interesting and cool customizations we've done with PingFederate and PingAccess. And people have seen these internally at Ping and they said to me, well, why is it that you, in this part of the world, being Australia, New Zealand and Southeast Asia, are coming across these interesting use cases that in some cases they haven't seen here in North America and even in Europe? And I think it's to do with our distance and the way we actually operate as an organisation there. We've generally got smaller teams both in the customer side as well as in the Ping team. And people have to do more with less often. So when we go and do projects with identity and access management, we're often having to do a broad range of tasks as part of that. And that really flushes out some interesting things in the organisations that I'll be talking about today. So the sort of things I'll be going through, firstly, just to give you a level set on what the different options are for doing customizations within the products. And then I'll go through 5 different use cases, some which I think are more consumer facing, others are more general use cases that can be used across all of the different user segments and so on. So let's have a quick talk about what we can do with the products to do customization. When I say customization, I essentially mean writing code. Now, generally speaking, it's not something that you want to be doing a lot of in products because of the impact that could have on your upgradability, moving from version to version. So generally, you always favour configuration over customization. However, there are cases when you actually do need to write code, and some of the things that we can do within, for example, PingFederate, work within the Java SDKs that are provided with the product. If you go into the PingFederate directory, there's an SDK subdirectory in there. It's got all of the different SDKs that you can use. It's pretty simple for you to set up the makefile to then compile the different customizations that you produce. And we'll even install it into the server for you automatically. So the sort of things you can do are build new IDP adapters so you can have different types of authentication methods and linking into other steps and processes during the authentication process itself, and that's something that we use a lot in the scenarios I'll be talking about here. But also talking to different types of data stores. Most people will use LDAP, they'll use AD, they will use a relational database to get attributes about users back. We've got several customers and partners now who are using NoSQL data stores and being able to call out to those, say, using REST. And this is where you can actually start to customize that within the SDK here. Also building authentication rules, so the specific set of rules that for a particular scenario, what type of device the user has, where they're coming from, other types of contextual information. You can build rules around that to then define a different authentication path for them. Password credential validators, that's how we actually take some type of credential and then validate it. The product comes with PCVs for LDAP and for Radius. But we've done particular PCV-specific databases. I have a customer in Australia who uses an Infomix database. And, you know, it kind of takes me back to 1999, but they're still out there. So these are the sort of things that we're required to do to help people get their particular requirements implemented. But you can also work within the Ognal scripting language in PingFederate. You can build out rules and call out to external systems and invoke other Java classes and so on through Ognal. And that's done at various steps in the server configuration as well. On the PingAccess side, which I'll talk less about in this, but it still is available there, we have a Java SDK, and that's where you can build out custom policies, you can build new agents for different application platforms, and also different site authenticators. And for a scripting language within PingAccess, we use Groovy, which is a lot more friendly than Ognal, and is something that is very widely used in the industry amongst Java people. And you can start to build out different policy requirements there. So for more information about that, please go to our website, developer.pingidentity.com, where you'll get sample code, you'll get all of the SDK documentation and other information about the standards that we support in the products themselves. So we'll jump straight on and talk about some of these interesting use cases we've come across. The first one that was very interesting, it was about 3 years ago. I had a major media company in Asia came to us and said they were doing a new project, and one of their things they were having a problem with was end users were sharing credentials for their premium services. And these were services that were paid by subscription or pay-per-view, and they thought they were losing revenue because people were sharing the credentials with their friends. So they wanted to limit the number of connections or concurrent sessions that were available for these consumers. At the time, we went away and we built a custom configuration that I'll talk about here. And at the time, we didn't actually have the PingAccess product in our portfolio, so we couldn't do any access management around this. So this solution works within PingFederate, and I'll talk about how that's configured in a minute. But some of the requirements were basically to limit the maximum number of concurrent OAuth sessions. So this will work across mobile as well as web. And to be able to give different session termination options. So it could be as simple as the first session lives on, and anyone who tries to come in after the number of maximum sessions has been breached will not be able to get a session at all. Could be the other way around, in that the last session to come in becomes the current session that's available to be used, and any older sessions will automatically be terminated. Or as you see on the screen here, it could be user selected. So the user will see a list of their concurrent sessions, they'll be able to select which one or which ones they want to terminate here. And that gives the administrator a lot of flexibility in how they want the user experience to happen in this case. And the way this is done is using a PingFederate adapter with a custom HTML form. So this is being used in a composite adapter. You might not need that with the new features in PingFederate 8. But this is the way we configure it in PingFederate 7. The main thing that it does is it queries the OAuth revocation service in PingFederate. So it can find out what grants or tokens have been granted to that particular end user, and then use its logic to determine what happens next. And if it actually needs to kill a session as part of this, then it's able to again do that through the revocation service in the product. So by doing this, we're able to provide security around concurrent sessions. We're able to help secure these premium content services and provide a pretty good user experience as well. Another one that we have seen over the last 12 months or so, we've done for 2 different customers now, is permission delegation. And this is actually to allow a company or an organisation to allow their end users to delegate permissions to a third party, whether that be another end user, so their spouse or their children or someone like that, or to another service, which could be a website that allows them, say, for example, access to some of their data that's secured in another website that they're using. This came out of 2 different requirements. The first one was from a financial services company in Australia, and they wanted to be able to provide the ability for spouses to have access to certain parts or certain tasks within the bank account. So, for example, to allow my wife to transfer up to $1,500 per day from a savings account, for example. Another interesting use case which uses the same model was at a tertiary education institute. And they wanted their students to be able to delegate access to certain data in their academic record to online job sites. So, for example, a monster.com could obtain permission from the student to read what their, the final grade that they got in their course was. Perhaps not really low-level information about what the actual grade was, but just pass-fail type scenarios. So within that requirement, we looked at what was around the industry, and some of you may have been in the UMA sessions that have been as part of the track this week for that particular piece. And we don't support UMA in our products yet at Ping, but we thought this is not a scenario that needs really complex UMA configurations. It's not a four-party type scenario like some of the UMA configurations are. We can actually do this using standard OAuth and OpenID Connect. So the way we built this was firstly using configuration and a custom IDP adapter in PingFederate such that it works with the OAuth 2 subsystem. We needed to build a custom web app that allows the user to create and manage their permissions. And that's something that we built in Grails. So very easy just to plug into the PingFederate server if you want it to run there, or you could run it externally as well. So the custom IDP adapter checks the requested scopes coming from the request from the third party, whether it be my wife or monster.com, and then checks that against the grants that have been provided to that end user in the PingFederate database. My colleague Tam Tran, who has actually written many of these customizations, updated it this week. He was previously using a custom rule in PingAccess to provide that checking. He's changed this now so it only requires PingFederate, and it's all done through the adapter. And as a result of that, we're able then to build out an app authentication rule tree such that we can now send an MFA request, a two-factor authentication request, to the original end user to say, do you allow this user to access this information at runtime? Which is really interesting for a lot of different use cases, again, that we've come across. So one that we've been asked for is with utilities companies. So I ring up on the phone, I want to change something about my account, I want to change what type of plan I am on for my mobile phone or my energy company or what have you. That's all done through verbal recognition over the phone. The normal, give me your date of birth, give me your mother's maiden name, those sort of questions, which are generally of less value now because social media is so prevalent. With this type of scenario, we can now trigger a request back to my phone saying that energy company ABC wants to make this change to your account. Do you approve? And I can, using PingID, just do a swipe on my screen or use my fingerprint or what have you. So this is a really interesting use case that we can actually build on, not only in terms of the delegation of the permission, but the runtime permission that we can do now. Another one we come across regularly, particularly in the consumer use case, is registration. So there are a lot of cases where the company wants to own the registration flow. They've got certain questions and certain fields they need filled out. They may need to provide different screens in terms of consent or tick this box to allow us to gather this information and so on. That's fine. Most of you who use our products know that we fit in well with those scenarios. We don't take over the process and have to flow through our screens. But there are cases where some people don't have those and they would like Ping Identity to provide some registration capability. So again, in this case, Tam wrote an IDP adapter that presents on the login page a link, and that then kicks off the registration screen that you see at the bottom there. Apologies for the text, it's obviously reflowed since we did these originally. But that gives you then the ability to capture certain information. Again, it's limited only by what you build into the HTML form in PingFederate. And I don't have my next page there. And that information then flows through a custom adapter, which will then provision them into a data store of your choice, whether that be NoSQL or LDAP or a relational database. And because that's all happening at authentication time, we're able to provide a very good user experience. There's no jumping out into other pages. It all happens within the one flow. And so if you need something that's very, very simple and doesn't interrupt the user very much, and also can invoke two-factor authentication as well, for example, and say the registration of a device for Ping ID, then this can be used for that scenario. Let's talk about some of the other general use cases. Impersonation is one that could be very useful. This is a scenario where you've got help desk people and somebody rings up and says, I'm having a problem, and the help desk person then has to, weave their magic on the phone with someone who may not be technology savvy to actually work out what the problem is, what it looks like, and where in the application there might be an issue. By using this particular IDP adapter, we're able to allow the help desk person to first of all search for the user's details, and then using a custom PingFederate adapter, the help desk person can impersonate the user in the application. What we're really doing there is finding the user's user principal, their unique identifier, and then replacing in the SAML assertion or what have you that goes to the application that particular identifier. Of course, we need to log the fact that we're impersonating the user. We log the identifier of the help desk person in this case, so there's a full audit trail. But it does give then the end user, the help desk user, the ability to impersonate the end user and use the application as if they were them. As part of that, the adapter could also insert additional attributes to say to the application, well, this is an impersonation session, and the application could then use that to limit the amount of work or tasks that the help desk person could actually do. And that, again, gives a lot of flexibility for a lot of organisations, because then you don't have to do a lot of trickery to try and work out what the end user problem is. The other major integration we did, which is very useful, is integration with SailPoint. So the SailPoint people are here. We have a pretty good relationship with them because in a lot of cases we don't compete. They do identity governance and complex provisioning with workflows and approvals and so on, which we don't do at Ping Identity. But we do get customers asking us, I don't want the user experience to be greatly different between login and single sign-on and the user managing their account. So we built an integration with SailPoint that was actually pretty easy, and this was done for a major Singapore customer. One of the things they required was the end user had to set up some secret questions and answers the first time that they logged in. And that data was to be stored in the SailPoint Identity IQ product. So as part of our authentication, we built a custom REST API adapter in PingFederate to make a call out to the SailPoint system. We called their REST APIs to check to see if the user had actually filled out those questions and answers already. As part of that, if the user hadn't filled them out, we redirected to the SailPoint screen for them to fill those questions and answers out. And as part of that, we supplied the SailPoint product with a resume URL such that they could redirect back to us and complete the login flow and the single sign-on flow. So we required the SailPoint guys to make a few modifications to their JSPs just so they could do that redirect, and that worked very, very well. We also, of course, enabled single sign-on into the SailPoint system so that the end user didn't have multiple passwords and have to log in multiple times there. So in terms of how this looks for the different flows, the user's coming in through PingAccess in this case. We're gating all access to the different web properties through PingAccess, and that will redirect to PingFederate to authenticate the user the first time. Now we've got the usual HTML form adapter, which was authenticating the end user against LDAP. And then there was the second HTML form adapter in a composite adapter, such that we would do that check via REST out to the SailPoint product. So that's the first flow, the green flow. So if the user wanted to actually then make a change to their password or log in for the first time, we would check that those questions and answers were filled out. Use case B, the blue flow, was when the user's password had expired. So we're able to track that through the LDAP error codes coming back from the LDAP server in through PingFederate. And again, we're doing a redirect through to the SailPoint Identity IQ solution there in that case, such that the user will change their password in Identity IQ. As part of that, we have to redirect back through to PingFederate so we can continue the flow and send them to the application they originally requested. Use case C was forgotten password reset, and that's again all done through initiating the request in the login screen, which is through PingFederate. We're doing a handoff to Identity IQ because that's where they will enter the user questions and answers. And in the case that they get those right, Identity IQ redirects back to us. So again, we can then pass them on to the application that they've requested. And for very much, for most of the time there, it's a very seamless flow for the end user. It's a couple of redirects and they don't have to do anything else. Of course, the UIs are slightly different between the product, but that's something that can be worked on. So I'm pretty close to the end here. I don't know about you guys, but I thought 20, 25 minutes is actually a bit short for some of these sessions. So I think probably we need 30, 35 minutes the next time we do this. But look, I'm very happy to take questions about any of those. Like I say, these are things that we did for proof of concept type scenarios or as part of RFPs to very quickly prove out the technology. And there's something that would have to be taken and productized or made into production quality to be used in real life situations. But we're pretty confident that we've designed these solutions such that they will scale and be performant.
Hi, my name is Wesley. I'm with Spectrum Health. One thing that's been great with Ping is they will work with you to build you custom solutions. We came to Ping with we had a use case where we needed an adapter to go from, it was kind of an else if, and they essentially built us an adapter. It's called the group lookup adapter, which will take an LDAP store and determine if it needs to do the second adapter. We were told at the time we were one of two companies using it, and to me that felt weird because I thought a lot of other companies could be using it. Where we initiated that case was through our account manager, which kind of looped through, and then we were given this solution. And I was curious if there was a better way to engage Ping for this type of stuff. Mostly things that might be a little outside the box. Yeah, we essentially started with a case, we logged a case, and then went through our account manager, and then we were delivered the solution, which was awesome. So I didn't know if there was a better way to do it.
Yeah, look, great feedback. Thanks for that. So the way we work at Ping is we have a client services team who are, I think, changing their name to professional services. I hope that they were professional before, but it sounds like they were, so that's good. But the client services team coin operated, so they will work with customers like yourselves, build a specification and deliver to that specification. One thing that we have done with some of that material that is valuable and us as technical people attached to the sales teams, we do write a lot of code for POCs and RFPs and so on. We're starting to open source that. So again, if you go to the developer.pingidentity.com site, you will see the links to our GitHub site, and you will be able to download some of this code, have a look at how it's done, see the sort of things that we're capable of doing, and reuse that in your own projects. Of course, open source, meaning no support, but if you do want support with that, again, our professional services teams can productize that code and provide ongoing support for you. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay. regarding the user registration slide that you brought up,
I'm sorry, what was that?
there was one slide which talked about user registration wherein you're
The
showing
registration slide? Yeah.
We are looking at something similar wherein the user goes to their IDP, gets authenticated, comes back, but they still need to create some amount of form fill, which is still a gap in what we're noticing, or is that something we are missing? I'm not completely sure, but can you elaborate more, or where I can find more about user registration? And probably it will help us. If you can elaborate more, that might also help me, probably.
So the question is, if the user authenticates, say, against Facebook or an external IDP, and then we get a payload of attributes back, and then that is provided on a form that they can fill out extra information, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, again, that's something we do regularly in our POCs. That's often a requirement, again, in education or consumer-facing use cases. So the question then is, what do you want the user experience to be? Is that something that you're building into your web UI in your application, or your user portal, or your registration application? That's something that we can be involved in. Or do you want it to happen within these PingFederate screens themselves? So both are possible. Again, it just depends. Conceptually, it's very simple. You've got a URL that kicks off the authentication against Facebook or your external IDP that's provided out of PingFederate. You need to redirect back to the page which is going to receive the payload from that external IDP, and format that and add any extra fields. And then your submit button is going to send that through to a URL in PingFederate, which may invoke another adapter in the flow, which would then inject those values into LDAP or a database or what have you. Or you could actually invoke a skim operation if you wanted to use our provisioning piece as well. So again, I like to say there are many ways of doing things with our products. It depends on how you want the end user to see or experience it is the main thing. I worked on with a customer recently. They have, I think, 34 user experience people and only 3 people doing security and identity. So I think, the UX people are the gatekeepers now. You've got to be very careful about what they want. But generally speaking, yes, there is some material, I think, on the developer site which talks about those type of scenarios. If not, just get in touch with your Ping RSA and they'll be happy to help you.
Hi, I have a question on the impersonate feature you explained.
Which one, sorry?
The impersonate.
Impersonating, yep.
Do you have control over what the customer help desk person can do when they impersonate, like in terms of permissions and privileges? Do they have read-only or read-write access when they're impersonating the end user?
So, yeah, that's a really interesting question. How do we limit what the impersonator can do in the application? The way we've built this, there are no limits at the moment. We're just logging the fact that it's an impersonation session. That wouldn't prevent you from providing some sort of limit. Say, for example, if you're using OAuth, you could provide certain scopes in that with the OAuth token that would limit what the impersonator could do versus what someone who had logged in as an end user could do. With SAML, it's a little more difficult. You have to actually have the application aware of what the certain attributes in the SAML assertion might mean for access control. If you're using PingAccess, for example, you could certainly do some access control rules around either of those scenarios, either attribute-based or OAuth scope-based. So again, because we're not building a production system in a lot of these cases, we build enough that we can prove out the scenario to the customer's needs. It's something that we could build on, or the customer could build on, to provide additional functionality like that.
Okay, one more question. Anybody?
Come on, any Australians out there?
Can I have 2 questions?
Oh, all right then.
Be quick.
How are we going?
One, are any of these integrations available on your GitHub site?
No.
Are
Not
they-
yet. So one thing I always do, and I tell the RSAs that I work with, when we do something like this, it has to be documented and it has to be customer ready so that we can get it out there. There's a bit of a process in getting things open sourced on the GitHub side, so we will push some of these things out there over the next couple of months or so. But no, these are not out there publicly yet. You had another one?
On the concurrent session limiting use case, in the scenario where the user selects to disregard an older session, what happens? Let's say the session was delegated out to a PingAccess through OpenID Connect scenario. How does that PingAccess session get affected when when that is terminated at PingFed?
Yeah, so what happens is that the user will no longer have those access grants in the PingFederate database. And look, my understanding is that when the next time the token is tried to be used through PingAccess, then that will fail because that has been revoked. So because we're using the revocation API, there should be a revocation process that happens immediately. Yeah.
Mark, thank you.
Great,
Appreciate it.
thanks everyone. Enjoy the show.